6 people. A remote farmhouse. Footprints in fresh snow that go to the house, but never back out. The killer stayed. They fed the animals. They warmed the stove. They lived among the victims' bodies. That's not a ghost story. That's Hinterkaifeck. March 1922. Bavaria. A family is wiped out in a way that still chills investigators, a century later. Tonight, we walk the path of the footprints. We pull back the curtains on a farm where silence swallowed answers, and where the most terrifying detail isn't the violence itself, but the ordinary, domestic things the killer kept doing afterward. Who could do that? And why has justice never found them? The farmhouse sat alone, a handful of wooden beams and thatched roofs, hemmed by dark spruce and black forest. Hinterkaifeck, literally behind the little farm, was remote enough that everyone knew the others by sight, but not close enough to hear secrets. The Grubers were ordinary. Andreas Gruber, a widower in his 60s, his elderly wife, Cecilia, their grown daughter, Victoria, Victoria's 2 small children, and the maid, who had just started work. 1922. Germany. Bread was thin, gossip was thicker. Neighbors lent each other seed and sugar. But still, you locked your door at night. On one March evening, that lock would be meaningless. What makes Hinterkaifeck a true nightmare is how everyday the clues are. A newspaper on the porch nobody bought. Keys gone from the hook. Footsteps in the snow leading from the woods to the house, but no prints leaving. And later, strange noises. Someone heard creaks in the attic. Someone else thought they glimpsed a shadow. These aren't cinematic effects. They're the small, domestic signs that something had been quietly wrong for days. In the weeks before the murders, neighbors reported details that, read one by one, feel like scenes in a slow burn horror. Victoria told a friend she had found a newspaper outside the door. Andreas complained of missing keys. Horses were fed, yet nobody went to the barn. Marion, a neighbor, later told investigators she'd seen smoke from the farmhouse chimney, even when nobody was supposed to be home. On March 31st, people noticed that no one had been to Mass on Sunday. The milk wasn't delivered. The mail piled up. For a tiny rural community, absence is a billboard. It screams that something is wrong. But asking for help wasn't immediate. The family didn't show up at the mill. They didn't pick up a telegram. Days stretched. By April 4th, curiosity had curdled into dread. And what neighbors would find was not something to put a box around. And close. It was a domestic scene of ruin, but with the strangest of human signatures. The killer had not fled. They had stayed. Neighbors approached the house, uneasy. A neighbor cut the lock and stepped in, and the scene quickly turned from quiet curiosity to horror. 6 people lay in the barn and house: husband, wife, daughter, 2 small children, and the maid. Each had been killed by blows from a mattock, a heavy garden tool, the kind used to break the frozen ground. What follows in the papers was brutal, but also bewildering. The victims were found in different rooms. One lay in the barn, another on a bench. The smallest child was found under a bed. It was not a tidy crime. It was chaotic and intimate. Yet after it happened, whoever did it did not stamp out of the house with demonic triumph. They fed the animals, they made soup, they tended the fire. Imagine that detail as a separate room in your mind. The killer, present in the house for days, heating the stove, using the keys they'd taken, sitting at the same table that had a murdered family's plates. That is the scene that broke Hinterkaifeck into legend. The local police arrived, but remember, this was 1922. Forensics were rudimentary. Fingerprinting existed, but the chaotic way the scene was handled, townsfolk wandering through, curious onlookers, priests, ruined evidence. The crime scene was contaminated by thousands of feet. Men came to gawk. Some removed articles. Some took trinkets. The concept of "do not touch" hadn't landed yet in rural Bavaria. Detectives worked through the usual suspects: neighbors with grudges, returning soldiers, estranged lovers, family secrets. A long list of suspects emerged over the years, a ghost parade of possible culprits, and yet none could be pinned down. Suspects died, evidence vanished, files were lost, rumors were stamped with the authority of time, and time hardened into myth. It's the little things you keep returning to, the ones that make Hinterkaifeck more unsettling than a robber-on-the-run case. Footprints in snow leading to the house, not away from it. A newspaper lying on the property that nobody had bought. Keys missing from the hook, but the killer used them. Voices and creaks heard in the attic in the days before the murder. The murder tool hidden, or so the story goes, in a loft or wall during demolition. The farmhouse was torn down in 1923. So curious pilgrims couldn't make an altar of it. But even demolition revealed more mysteries. Those breadcrumbs feed theories. They also feed dread. Because it's one thing to be robbed. It's another to have someone live inside your house, using your life as their backdrop after they've ripped it apart. Over the last century, dozens of names have drifted forward as possible perpetrators. None fit perfectly. None carried the case home. Lorenz Schlittenbauer, the neighbor with access. He knew the family. He had a close relationship with Victoria, and his movements were odd. He was able to enter the property without much suspicion in the days after the murders, and his proximity made people look at him. But motive is thin on paper. He was investigated and ultimately not charged. Was he simply the nearby man who looked suspicious in hindsight? Possibly. A returned soldier or secret husband? Carl Gabriel theory. Victoria's husband had been presumed dead in the war. Some whispered he survived and returned with vengeance. That kind of explosive motive would fit, but there's no proof. Bodies and alibis and the passage of time bury easy answers. A random itinerant or serial offender, the man from the train idea. Some writers have suggested a transient killer who struck across regions. It fits the brutality, occasionally the pattern, but Hinterkaifeck's intimacy, The idea that the killer could live upstairs for days argues for local knowledge, for patience, and a breathing understanding of the farmhouse's rhythms. Family secrets and cover-ups. Whispers of scandal, paternity questions, secret affairs followed the Grubers. In a small village that reveres reputation, an explosive secret could be motive. Yet secrets are often offered where evidence is thin. They tell better fiction than they do forensics. Multiple perpetrators. One person could rarely lure and kill an entire family in short order and then behave undetected. Some investigators and armchair sleuths propose more than one assailant. But again, motive, alignment, opportunity. The puzzle needs more than a scattered piece. For each suspect, there are holes. Witness statements contradicted each other. People changed stories. Time smoothed the edges of testimony. What remains is a tapestry of possibilities, none of them watertight. Let's return to the strangest fact. The killer stayed. Why does that matter? Because it implies either extraordinary courage or cold-blooded normalcy. To live in a space with dead bodies requires a cognitive shift. You must not view your actions as abnormal. You must be able to rationalize, or you must be deranged. But consider a different option. The killer was a person the family trusted, someone who moved in like a guest. If you already knew the farm's routines, you could blend in. You could feed the horses because you knew their habits. You could burn the wood because you knew where to find it. This theory points toward someone with intimate knowledge, a neighbor, a distant relative, someone who had a hidden relationship with the household. That detail also explains why the crime didn't prompt immediate confession. A trusted person's betrayal is hard to name in a tight community. Accusations travel like venom. People shut up. If Hinterkaifeck feels unsolvable, part of that is because investigators walked into a swamp. Contamination, delayed responses, and the era's forensic limitations created a rotten foundation. Thousands of people trod through the scene before detectives could protect it. Objects were taken as souvenirs. The farmhouse was eventually demolished, scattering whatever small traces remained. When modern investigators reopened files decades later, police academy students, amateur sleuths, journalists, they found fragments and frustration. One group of students even named a prime suspect. But laws and lack of conclusive evidence prevented a prosecution. When leads depend on circumstantial points and the living sources dry up, the legal system has little to hold. Hinterkaifeck has become a magnet for writers, filmmakers, and true crime obsessives. Books have been written, documentaries filmed. The case is retold in podcasts with atmospheric music and breathy narration. Each retelling adds a layer of interpretation. The more we retell, the more Hinterkaifeck slides from crime file to folklore. In the early 2000s, renewed interest led to fresh analysis. Students studied the case, historians dug into archives, and online communities traded theories. DNA technology now exists that wasn't available in 1922. But there's a limit to what DNA can solve when no clear reference sample exists and when the scene was so thoroughly compromised. Yet modern re-examination matters. It keeps pressure on cold files, it forces archives to open, and it sometimes uncovers simple facts that were previously neglected. A letter here, a registry entry there. These small things are occasionally enough to move a case forward. If I had to pick the three most plausible explanations, they would be these. A local with secrets. Someone who knew the family and exploited trust. The stayed-in-the-house detail leans heavy in this direction. Local men with access and motive. Lovers, hidden fathers, angry neighbors. Fit. This also explains the physical ease of moving through the property undetected. A revenge return. The husband or soldier who came back and sought brutal retribution. This offers easy motive, but needs proof. The emotional drama sells the idea, but lacks the physical anchors modern law needs. Multiple perpetrators. A planning or opportunistic crime involving more than one person. This would explain logistics, but raises issues about collusion and the risk of loose talk afterward. In small villages, loose talk tends to leak, and yet Hinterkaifeck's silence remained. Each hypothesis works to a degree and fails to seal the story. For me, the most chilling is the first. The betrayal by someone who could make a house their home and a murder scene their kitchen. So, what do you think? Was it the neighbor who knew too much? A returned soldier with a broken mind? Or something stranger? A group conspiracy? Drop your theory in the comments now. I read them all, and the best, most plausible one will be pinned. Hinterkaifeck refuses a neat ending. It offers 100 small doors, each labeled with a rumor or a dead name. The more we look, the more the story sits like a splinter under the skin. Impossible to ignore, unbearable to extract. Maybe the truth will surface, maybe it won't. But every time someone tells the story again, in this video, in your comment, in a late-night forum, we carve a little more reality out of the fog. If you want deep dives like this with sources, timelines, and follow-up videos that debunk or prove the top theories, like and subscribe. Share this with someone who loves a sinister, silent mystery. And if you have material, old photos, obscure documents, local lore, DM us. We'll look at it in the follow-up. Until next time, lock your door, listen for footsteps, and remember, sometimes the scariest person in the room is the one who looks most like family.